The autumn rain fell steadily over Portland's West Hills, misting the evergreens and turning the city below into a watercolor of grays and greens. Cameron Walsh stood in the headquarters of Harvest Haven, his sustainable food company, overlooking the Willamette River as it wound through downtown. At 40 years old, he had built one of the most successful organic farming and distribution operations in the Pacific Northwest, transforming his grandfather's small family farm into a network of sustainable farms, farmers markets, and farm-to-table restaurants that employed over 500 people and fed half of Portland. His commitment to environmental stewardship and fair wages had made him a darling of the sustainable food movement, and earned him a fortune that would have astonished his working-class family. Yet none of those achievements meant as much to him as knowing his mother Gloria lived comfortably in the farmhouse on the original family property in the hills above the city. Gloria Walsh had raised Cameron alone after his father died in a farming accident when Cameron was 8 years old. She had been a social worker for the state, advocating for foster children and at-risk families, while trying to keep the small farm running on weekends and evenings. She had worked herself to exhaustion, sometimes choosing between buying Cameron new shoes or fixing the tractor, always choosing his needs over hers. She never complained about the burden, never made him feel guilty for her sacrifices. Now at 73 years old, she lived in the restored farmhouse, where Cameron had grown up, a cozy craftsman with a vegetable garden, a view of Mount Hood and shelves filled with books about social justice and environmental activism. Her red hair had faded to white, worn in a practical braid, and her blue eyes still held the fierce compassion of someone who had spent decades fighting for vulnerable people. Felicity Ashford had entered Cameron's world 2 years ago at a sustainable agriculture conference in San Francisco. She was elegant, 33 years old, with perfectly styled auburn hair, striking green eyes, and the polished sophistication that came from a wealthy Bay Area family and a Stanford degree. She worked in sustainable brand consulting, advising companies on environmental messaging, though Cameron had noticed her expertise seemed more about optics than actual impact. Felicity had made him feel like he finally belonged in the circles of influential environmentalists and social entrepreneurs, like his farm boy roots could be refined with the right partner. 6 months ago he had proposed to her at Multnomah Falls, and she had said yes with tears that seemed genuine. The wedding was planned for spring, an elegant affair at one of his farm-to-table restaurants, with 200 guests from the sustainable business community. Everything appeared idyllic. Cameron had the success, the environmental impact, the sophisticated fiancé who understood his world, and his mother living peacefully on the family land. He felt he had honored his father's legacy while building something meaningful. If only he had been paying closer attention, he might have noticed the poison creeping into his carefully cultivated garden. Gloria sat in the farmhouse kitchen, her hands trembling as she tried to drink her morning tea. She felt dizzy again, nauseous, her heart racing uncomfortably. This had been happening more frequently over the past few months. Stomach problems, dizziness, confusion, weakness. Her doctor had run tests but found nothing definitive, suggesting it might be age-related issues or stress. But Gloria knew her own body, and something felt deeply wrong. She glanced nervously toward the driveway, watching for Felicity's white Range Rover. Felicity had been staying at the farmhouse frequently, claiming she wanted to bond with Gloria and help plan the wedding, but Gloria had come to dread her visits. It had started subtly, perhaps 4 months after the engagement. At first just dismissive comments, remarks about how Gloria's social work career had been depressing, how the old farmhouse was rustic to the point of embarrassing, how it must be difficult to understand modern environmental business with her outdated activism background. Gloria had tried to ignore it, telling herself Felicity was adjusting to Portland after San Francisco. But the contempt had evolved into something far more sinister. Gloria had noticed that her symptoms always seemed to worsen after Felicity prepared meals for her, or made her tea. She had seen Felicity going through her medications, claiming to organize them, but Gloria's pills looked different afterward, similar but not quite the same. Once Gloria had found a bottle of cleaning solution that had been moved from under the sink to near the kitchen counter where Gloria prepared her food. And she had caught Felicity putting something in Gloria's tea, claiming it was just honey, but the substance had been white and crystalline, nothing like honey. But Felicity also employed more direct violence when she felt it was safe. She had pushed Gloria on the stairs, not hard enough to make her fall completely, but enough to make her stumble dangerously. She had grabbed Gloria's arm with bruising force when Gloria had questioned her about the medications. She had accidentally left obstacles in Gloria's path in dark hallways, and she had explicitly threatened that if Gloria ever told Cameron, Felicity would claim Gloria was developing paranoid delusions, that the confusion and irrational fears were signs of dementia. Gloria had tried to convince herself she was being paranoid, that perhaps her symptoms were natural aging, but her instincts, honed through decades of investigating child abuse and neglect cases, told her she was in danger, and Gloria, who had spent her entire life protecting vulnerable people, couldn't bear the thought of destroying her son's happiness by exposing the woman he seemed so proud to be marrying. So she remained mostly silent, documenting her symptoms in a private journal, making excuses when Cameron noticed her declining health. She told him she was tired, that she was adjusting to new medications, that she was naturally clumsy. He believed her, because he was consumed with expansion plans, new farm acquisitions, and sustainability initiatives that were positioning Harvest Haven as an industry leader. But someone was paying attention. Dr. Sarah Chen had been Gloria's primary care physician for 15 years, had known her as a vibrant, sharp woman who rarely got sick. When Gloria came in for the 4th time in 3 months, with mysterious symptoms, nausea, dizziness, confusion, rapid heartbeat, Dr. Chen's instincts told her something was very wrong. The symptoms didn't fit any clear diagnosis, but they did fit a pattern she had learned to recognize in her medical training: poisoning. Dr. Chen ordered more comprehensive tests, including a toxicology screening that she didn't tell Gloria about, not wanting to alarm her if it came back negative. But when the results came back showing elevated levels of certain substances that shouldn't be in Gloria's system, cleaning chemicals, medication that wasn't prescribed to her, other compounds that suggested deliberate contamination, Dr. Chen knew she had to act. She called Cameron Walsh directly. "Mr. Walsh, this is Dr. Chen, your mother's physician. I need to speak with you privately and urgently about your mother's health. Can you come to my office today?" Cameron, alarmed by the doctor's tone, cleared his afternoon schedule and drove to the medical center. Dr. Chen closed her office door and spoke bluntly. "Your mother has been coming to me with concerning symptoms for months. I ran a comprehensive toxicology screening, and the results suggest she's being exposed to harmful substances, possibly deliberately. The patterns are consistent with poisoning, not environmental exposure or accidental ingestion." Cameron felt the room tilt. "Poisoning? That's impossible. Who would?" But even as he said it, pieces started clicking into place. His mother's declining health, that had started around the time Felicity began staying at the farmhouse. The way Gloria seemed worse after Felicity's visits. The fear he had glimpsed in his mother's eyes when Felicity was around, quickly hidden when she thought he was watching. "I can't tell you who," Dr. Chen said carefully. "But I'm legally obligated to report suspected elder abuse. I wanted to talk to you first, because your mother seems afraid to speak about what's happening. Mr. Walsh, someone with access to your mother's food and medications is harming her. You need to find out who and stop it immediately." Cameron left the medical center in a daze, his mind racing. He drove toward the farmhouse but stopped himself before turning up the long driveway. He needed to think, to plan, to be smart about this. If someone was poisoning his mother, and his mind kept returning to Felicity despite his desperate hope that it couldn't be true, he needed proof before making accusations. He called his head of security, a former police detective named Marcus, who handled security for Harvest Haven's facilities. "Marcus, I need you to install hidden cameras in my mother's farmhouse. Every room. I need to see what's happening when I'm not there." Everything okay, boss? Marcus asked, concern in his voice. No, Cameron said honestly. I think someone might be hurting my mother. I need to know who and how. Marcus installed the cameras that night while Felicity was back in the city, and Gloria was asleep. Small, hidden cameras in every room, streaming to an app on Cameron's phone. Cameron hated the invasion of his mother's privacy, but Dr. Chen's words kept echoing in his mind. Someone is poisoning her. For 2 days, Cameron watched the footage obsessively between meetings, seeing mostly normal activity. Gloria reading, gardening, cooking simple meals. Felicity was there frequently, acting solicitous and helpful. Cameron was starting to wonder if he had overreacted, if there was some other explanation. Then, on the 3rd day, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The footage showed Felicity in Gloria's kitchen, alone. She pulled a small bottle from her designer handbag. Cameron couldn't see the label clearly on the camera, and poured a small amount of white powder into the teapot on the stove, where Gloria's afternoon tea was brewing. Then Felicity stirred it calmly, replaced the teapot lid, and walked away as if nothing had happened. Cameron watched in horror as, 10 minutes later, Gloria came into the kitchen and poured herself a cup of the contaminated tea. He grabbed his phone and called his mother immediately. Mom, don't drink the tea. Whatever you're drinking, stop right now. Gloria, startled by the urgency in his voice, set down her cup. Cameron? What's wrong? Where's Felicity? She's upstairs taking a shower. Cameron, you're scaring me. Mom, I'm coming home right now. Lock your bedroom door and don't come out until I get there. Don't eat or drink anything. I'm 20 minutes away. Cameron made the drive from downtown Portland to the West Hills in 15 minutes, breaking every speed limit. He burst into the farmhouse and found Gloria in her locked bedroom, looking pale and frightened. Mom, are you okay? Did you drink any of that tea? Just one sip before you called. Cameron? What's happening? Cameron pulled out his phone and showed her the video footage of Felicity putting something in the teapot. Gloria's face went white. Then she ran to the bathroom and vomited. When she came out, she was crying. I thought I was going crazy, she whispered. I thought I was being paranoid, but I've been getting sick every time she makes me food or tea. I just didn't want to believe. The sound of footsteps on the stairs interrupted her. Felicity appeared in the doorway, her hair still damp from the shower, her face shifting from surprise to calculation when she saw Cameron. Cameron! What a lovely surprise! I didn't know you were coming by. Cameron looked at the woman he had planned to marry and saw a complete stranger. What did you put in my mother's tea? Felicity's expression didn't change. I don't know what you're talking about. Your mother must be confused again. She's been having these episodes. I have you on camera, Cameron said, his voice deadly calm despite the rage coursing through him. Hidden cameras, throughout the house. I watched you pour something from a bottle in your purse into the teapot 30 minutes ago. What was it? For just a moment, Felicity's mask slipped, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. Then she smiled, actually smiled. You can't prove anything. It was sugar. Your mother likes sweet tea. It was white powder, not granulated sugar. And my mother's doctor found elevated levels of toxic substances in her blood. What have you been giving her, Felicity? Felicity's smile faded. Your mother is a burden, Cameron. She's embarrassing with her outdated activism and her shabby little farmhouse. Do you know what people in San Francisco say? Walsh's mother is a retired social worker who still lives on a farm. You've built this sustainable empire, this brand, and she undermines it with her poverty mentality. Gloria gasped. But Cameron held up a hand to stop her from speaking. He wanted to hear all of it, wanted to understand the depth of Felicity's cruelty. I was helping you, Felicity continued, her voice taking on a self-righteous tone. Making her sick enough that you'd have no choice but to put her in a care facility. Then we could sell this depressing property, build something modern and impressive here, or just sell it for the land value. You could finally be free of the weight of your past. The calculated cruelty of it. The months of deliberately poisoning his mother left Cameron speechless for a moment. This woman had been systematically trying to harm his mother to make her so sick that Cameron would institutionalize her, all so Felicity could erase his family history and polish his image. "Get out," Cameron said quietly. "Cameron, be reasonable. Get out." The shout seemed to shake the old farmhouse. Cameron never raised his voice, but he was shaking with rage now, barely containing it. "Get out of this house. Get off this property. Get out of my life. I have video evidence of you poisoning my mother. I have toxicology reports. I have Doc Chen's medical documentation. If you're not gone in the next 5 minutes, I'm calling the police and having you arrested for attempted murder." Felicity's face transformed, her beauty warping into something ugly. "You're throwing away everything we have because of this." "If you finish that sentence," Cameron interrupted, his voice ice cold, "I will dedicate the rest of my life to making sure you never work in sustainability or consulting again. I will tell everyone, every company, every conference, every network, exactly what you did, so I suggest you leave. Now." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police in 30 seconds, whether you're gone or not. The only question is whether you're here when they arrive." Felicity stared at him for a long moment, perhaps finally realizing she had catastrophically miscalculated. Cameron Walsh might have wanted to build a sustainable business empire, but he was still the farm boy whose social worker mother had fought for vulnerable people her entire life, and Felicity had just tried to kill the one person who mattered more than anything else. She grabbed her purse and ran, her footsteps angry on the old wooden floors. Cameron heard her Range Rover start and roar down the driveway. Only then did he turn to his mother, who had collapsed onto her bed, shaking. "Mom," he said, kneeling beside her. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I almost let her." He couldn't finish the sentence. Gloria pulled him into her arms, and they held each other, both crying. Gloria with relief and shock, Cameron with guilt and horror at how close he had come to losing his mother to deliberate poisoning. When they finally pulled apart, Cameron made immediate calls. Police first, to report the poisoning and provide the video evidence and medical reports. Dr. Chen second, to arrange immediate medical treatment to help Gloria's body process and eliminate whatever toxins Felicity had been giving her. His attorney third, to begin criminal proceedings and ensure Felicity would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The police investigation moved quickly. The bottle in Felicity's purse was found to contain a mixture of prescription medications and cleaning chemicals. Not enough to kill Gloria quickly, but enough to make her chronically ill, confused, and weak. Felicity was arrested 3 days later and charged with attempted murder, elder abuse, and poisoning. The evidence was overwhelming: video footage, toxicology reports, the bottle itself with Felicity's fingerprints. Cameron took an immediate leave of absence from Harvest Haven, promoting his COO to acting CEO. He moved back into the farmhouse to be with Gloria as she recovered, to ensure she felt safe, to simply be present in a way he hadn't been in years. Dr. Chen supervised Gloria's treatment, helping her body eliminate the accumulated toxins. It took weeks, but gradually Gloria's color returned, her strength rebuilt, her mind cleared of the fog that had been clouding it. But the psychological recovery took longer. Gloria had nightmares, startled easily, struggled with trusting food or drinks that she hadn't prepared herself. Cameron arranged for a therapist who specialized in trauma from poisoning and abuse. The sessions were difficult. Gloria felt violated in a profound way. Her own home and meals turned into weapons against her. But slowly, she began to heal. One evening, about 2 months after Felicity's arrest, Gloria said something that changed Cameron's trajectory. "I've been thinking about my garden," she said, "about how healing it's been for me to be back in the soil, growing things, about how working with living plants helps me feel alive again after she tried to poison me." Cameron had been thinking similar thoughts. His research into elder abuse and poisoning cases had revealed that many elderly people experienced isolation, vulnerability, and trauma. But he had also learned about therapeutic horticulture, how working with plants and soil could help people heal from trauma, provide purpose and community, rebuild trust in the world. He started developing a program that brought together his expertise in sustainable farming with Gloria's experience in social work and her personal journey of healing. The program was called Harvest of Hope. It created therapeutic farming programs specifically for elderly people, survivors of abuse, people struggling with isolation or depression, those recovering from trauma. Participants would work in the gardens on his various farms, learning about organic growing, harvesting produce, connecting with nature and with each other. But it was more than just gardening. Staff included social workers trained in elder abuse recognition, therapists who used horticultural therapy, nurses who monitored health. The program provided transportation, meals, community, and most importantly, a safe space where vulnerable elderly people could rebuild their sense of agency and trust. Gloria became the program's heart and inspiration. She worked in the gardens alongside other participants, sharing her story when she felt ready, showing others that healing was possible. Her journey from poisoning victim to thriving gardener gave hope to others who had suffered abuse. It was at a Harvest of Hope community gathering that Cameron met Jade Thompson. She was a horticultural therapist who had started volunteering with the program, working specifically with trauma survivors. Cameron noticed her immediately, not just because she was beautiful, with natural curls, warm brown skin, and a gentle smile, but because of how she interacted with the elderly participants. She listened to their stories with genuine interest, worked beside them in the soil without condescension, created space for them to heal at their own pace. After the gathering, they ended up talking in the greenhouse. Jade was 37, had grown up on a small farm in rural Oregon, and had become a horticultural therapist after seeing how gardening had helped her grandmother recover from depression after her grandfather's death. She spoke passionately about how working with plants could restore dignity and agency to people who had been made to feel powerless. Cameron found himself drawn to Jade's authenticity, her deep understanding of trauma and healing through nature, her commitment to serving rather than performing. But he was cautious now, hyper-aware after Felicity. He had been so catastrophically wrong before. Over the following months, Cameron and Jade kept crossing paths at Harvest of Hope events, at therapeutic horticulture conferences in the gardens where they both volunteered. Their friendship developed naturally, built on shared purpose and genuine connection. Jade met Gloria multiple times, and the bond between them was obvious. Jade would ask Gloria about her social work days, bring seeds to try in Gloria's garden, remember details from previous conversations about Gloria's activism work. Gloria watched carefully, protective, but hopeful. She saw how Jade treated everyone the same, whether they were wealthy farm owners or elderly people on fixed incomes, whether they had influence or had nothing to offer. She saw how Jade's kindness was consistent, not performative, how her work was about healing rather than image. Nearly a year after Felicity's arrest and conviction, she received 7 years for attempted murder and elder abuse. Cameron finally asked Jade on an actual date. They went to a small farm-to-table restaurant in the countryside. Nothing fancy, just fresh food and authentic conversation. That dinner stretched into 3 hours of talking, laughing, sharing stories about their families and what they wanted their lives to mean. When Cameron walked Jade to her car, she kissed him warm and genuine, and told him she'd been wondering if he was ever going to stop being so careful around her, that she understood why he was protective, but that she was real and present and not going anywhere. Their relationship was everything his engagement to Felicity hadn't been. Jade didn't care about his business empire or his industry reputation. She drove a used truck, lived in a small farmhouse she was renovating herself, and was perfectly happy with picnics in the garden and farmers market dates. What she valued was authenticity, healing, connection to the earth. She made Cameron laugh, challenged him when he fell back into image-conscious thinking, reminded him that success was measured in lives healed, not revenue generated. Gloria watched her son fall in love again, genuinely this time, and felt only joy. She got to know Jade through dinners at the farmhouse, working together in the gardens, long conversations about healing and growth, both in plants and in people. When Jade brought her grandmother to meet Gloria, and the three women worked together planting a healing garden, Gloria knew this was real. One spring afternoon, about 15 months after Felicity had been sent to prison, Cameron found his mother in her vegetable garden, planting tomatoes. He knelt beside her in the soil and helped her work. After a comfortable silence, he told Gloria that he was thinking about asking Jade to marry him. He wanted to know what his mother thought. Gloria sat back on her heels and looked at her son, with those fierce blue eyes. "Jade is everything that woman wasn't," she said simply. "She's genuine, she's kind. She values healing and growth over image and status. And most importantly, she loves you for who you truly are, including where you come from and who raised you." She paused, then smiled. "But Cameron, you don't need my permission. You know Jade is right for you. I see it in how you are together. You're more yourself, more like the boy I raised to care about people and the earth." Cameron felt tears prick his eyes. "I almost married someone who tried to poison you to death, Mom. How can I trust my judgment?" "Because you learned," Gloria said firmly. "And because you acted when you found out. You protected me. You changed everything. That's what matters, not that you were fooled, but that you learned and grew. And you're being careful now, which is why. But don't let that woman's evil make you doubt something good. You know the difference now. Trust that." Cameron proposed to Jade on a quiet evening in the greenhouse at Harvest of Hope, surrounded by growing things and the elderly people who were healing through the program. There was no performance, no perfect moment for social media, no image to maintain, just two people who had found something real in each other, built on shared values and authentic love. Jade said yes, through happy tears, and they celebrated with Gloria and Jade's grandmother over food grown in their gardens, eaten at the old farmhouse table, where Cameron had grown up. The wedding when it happened was nothing like what Cameron had planned with Felicity. It was held outdoors on the original family farm, with a ceremony in Gloria's vegetable garden, decorated by Harvest of Hope participants and volunteers. There were 200 people, farmers, social workers, horticultural therapists, Harvest of Hope participants, elderly people whose lives had been changed by the program. No industry press, no sustainability influencers, no strategic networking, just people who actually mattered, celebrating something genuine. Cameron's vows made everyone cry because they were so honest. He talked about how his mother had taught him that real wealth was in soil and service, that success was measured in lives nurtured, not profits accumulated, that the most important work was often invisible and undervalued. He thanked Jade for helping him rediscover those values after he'd almost lost them, for loving not just him but his mother, for understanding that healing happens slowly, in garden time, not business time. Cameron and Jade built a life that prioritized meaning over metrics. They lived on the family farm with Gloria, who remained in her beloved farmhouse but was fully integrated into daily life. Cameron continued to lead Harvest Haven but devoted equal time to Harvest of Hope, which had expanded to serve thousands of elderly people across Oregon and Washington. The program had evolved based on participant feedback, adding different therapeutic modalities, beyond just gardening, creating support groups for abuse survivors, partnering with law enforcement to train officers in recognizing elder abuse, providing legal advocacy for elderly people facing exploitation. It had helped dozens of elder abuse cases come to light and had provided healing community for thousands more. But more than the numbers, Cameron found meaning in the individual stories. The elderly woman in Eugene, whose daughter had been financially exploiting her, discovered when a Harvest of Hope volunteer noticed she couldn't afford seeds for her garden plot. The man in Salem, whose nursing home had been neglecting him, identified when he mentioned during a gardening session that he hadn't seen a doctor in over a year despite chronic pain. The grandmother in Portland, not unlike Gloria, whose family had been gaslighting her about her mental capacity, who regained confidence through successfully growing her own vegetables and proving to herself that her mind was sharp. Each story reminded Cameron of his mother, of how easily she could have died from Felicity's poisoning if Dr. Chen hadn't been paying attention, if he hadn't installed those cameras, if he hadn't arrived in time to stop Gloria from drinking more of the contaminated tea. Years passed peacefully. Cameron and Jade had 2 biological children and fostered several more, raising them on the farm surrounded by gardens, animals and elderly people, who became honorary grandparents. Gloria became the grandmother she was meant to be, teaching all the kids about plants and social justice, showing them that the most important things in life grow slowly and require patient tending. When Gloria passed away peacefully at 81, it was in her beloved farmhouse, surrounded by flowers from her garden, and photos of grandchildren covered in garden soil. At her funeral, Cameron gave a eulogy that was unflinchingly honest about everything: his pursuit of business success that had blinded him, Felicity's systematic poisoning of his mother, Dr. Chen's life-saving suspicion, his eventual awakening and the work that had come from it. "My mother taught me 2 fundamental lessons," Cameron said to the packed church. "First, through her decades of social work and activism, she showed me that protecting vulnerable people is the most important work anyone can do, that justice requires constant vigilance, that we must speak up when we see wrong. And second, through her survival and healing, she taught me that growth takes time, that healing happens in its own season, that working with the earth can restore what cruelty has broken." He paused, looking at Jade and their children in the front row. "I spent years building a business, accumulating success, chasing recognition in the sustainability world. I almost married someone who tried to murder my mother through systematic poisoning. Doc Chen's vigilance and my discovery of the truth shattered my complacency and gave me the chance to build something meaningful. I hate that Mom suffered. I hate that someone I brought into her life tried to kill her. But I'm grateful that Doc Chen was paying attention, that I listened, that I found the truth in time, that we had those final years together, building something that now helps thousands of other people's mothers heal." The years continued. Harvest of Hope kept growing, expanding to other states, becoming a model for therapeutic horticulture programs serving trauma survivors. Cameron and Jade grew old together. Their children grew up, understanding that healing requires patience, that justice requires vigilance, that the most important work is protecting the vulnerable. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, Cameron would sit in Gloria's garden, now tended by multiple generations, and he would think about the journey that had brought him here. The ambition and blindness, the betrayal and poisoning, the guilt and redemption, the loss and the healing work built from that loss. He thought about Felicity sometimes, serving her prison sentence, and felt not anger but a kind of sad understanding. She had been so consumed by image and status that she had been willing to murder for it, to slowly poison a good woman who had spent her life helping others. But mostly he thought about his mother, her fierce compassion, her dedication to vulnerable people, her strength in surviving and healing. She had wanted him to be successful, yes, but she had wanted even more for him to use his success to protect others, to fight injustice, to create spaces where broken people could grow and heal. And in the end, Cameron had learned. It had taken Dr. Chen's medical intuition and hidden camera footage. And he would always carry guilt for not seeing the poisoning sooner. But he had learned. And he had built a life on the right foundation. Not image, but impact. Not status but service. Not performance but authentic healing through connection to the earth and to community. Cameron Walsh had chased sustainability success, and almost married someone who tried to murder his mother through systematic poisoning. But Gloria's survival had opened his eyes, and he had spent the rest of his life honoring her sacrifice and her healing by finally understanding what she had always known, that protecting the vulnerable is sacred work, that healing takes time and patience, that the most important growth happens slowly, in good soil, with careful tending. The Harvest of Hope program would continue creating healing spaces for elderly people long after Cameron was gone. A living monument to a social worker who had survived poisoning and transformed her trauma into a garden where thousands of others could heal. That was Gloria Walsh's legacy, not victimhood, but the transformation of her son, and through him, the healing of thousands of others, through patient, careful, loving work in the soil. Every story carries within it an echo of our shared humanity. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone special. Leave us a comment about what you felt, and subscribe to join us for more soul-reaching stories. Because every life tells a story that deserves to be heard. See you next time.